The reality of the 2026 offseason for the Detroit Lions is already taking shape, and it starts behind the scenes, not on the field. While the roster will eventually dominate the conversation, the first real movement is happening inside the building, within the coaching staff and front office. The Lions are not searching for a new head coach, but there is undeniable change underway, and it has the potential to influence everything that comes next for this team. The NFL coaching carousel is spinning. There are 7 head coaching vacancies across the league, and whenever that happens, it creates a ripple effect that reaches far beyond just those open jobs. Detroit is feeling those ripples right now. The most immediate and concrete change is the vacancy at offensive coordinator. The Lions made the decision to part ways with John Morton after just 1 season. That move alone signals how seriously this organization is evaluating every layer of its operation as it prepares for the next phase. 1 season was enough for Detroit to decide it needed a different direction on offense, and that decision opens the door to a wide range of possibilities. The Lions are now in the market for a new offensive coordinator, and history tells us that this process will likely be far more extensive than what leaks out publicly. Dan Campbell himself has already acknowledged in the past that the team conducts far more interviews than are ever reported. Last year, by his own estimate, the Lions interviewed between 24 and 26 candidates across coordinator positions, with only a fraction becoming public knowledge. That matters, because what fans see right now is only the surface. At this stage, only a few names have emerged, and one of them is David Blau, currently serving as an assistant quarterbacks coach with the Washington Commanders. It is not even clear whether Blau has officially interviewed yet, but his name being connected to the role is enough to spark discussion. Blau is a former NFL quarterback who spent time with the Lions as a player, and that familiarity naturally draws attention. Some see him as a legitimate candidate because of his understanding of modern offensive systems and his developmental work with quarterbacks. Others question whether his experience level matches what a team with Super Bowl aspirations truly needs at offensive coordinator. Those debates are already forming, and they are likely to intensify as more names quietly enter the picture. Another name connected to the offensive coordinator conversation is former Miami Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel. His inclusion immediately raises eyebrows because of his offensive reputation and background. Even being mentioned as a candidate underscores how wide the Lions' search could be. This front office is not limiting itself to one type of profile. They are clearly open to exploring different paths, whether that means an up-and-coming assistant or someone with head coaching experience who brings a proven offensive identity. At the same time, the Lions are also dealing with movement elsewhere on the staff. Tyler Roll, who coached tight ends, has been hired as the offensive coordinator at Iowa State. That is another vacancy created, another adjustment that has to be made, and another example of how success leads to turnover. Beyond the coaching staff, there is also potential movement at the executive level. Lions COO Mike DISNER has emerged as a candidate for the Atlanta Falcons' president of football operations position, with an interview scheduled for January 8th. That is not a minor detail. DISNER has been a key figure in the Lions' front office structure, and interest from another organization speaks to how Detroit's internal rebuild has gained league-wide respect. The Falcons' search includes several other high-profile candidates, such as former Falcons quarterback Matt Ryan, who is considered the favorite, along with Josh Williams from the 49ers, Brant Tylis from the Panthers, and Ian Cunningham from the Bears organization. Still, the fact that DISNER is part of that conversation puts the spotlight on Detroit's leadership group. What all of this tells us is that the Lions are entering a delicate but critical stretch. They are not tearing anything down, but they are not standing still either. There is an understanding inside the building that continuity matters, yet improvement is non-negotiable. The offensive coordinator decision, the possible loss of staff members to other opportunities, and the quiet, methodical way the Lions conduct their searches all point to an organization that is intentional about its next steps. This is not chaos. This is calculated movement. For the fans, this part of the offseason can feel uncomfortable because so much happens out of view. Names surface without context, decisions are made without public explanation, and patience is required. But these moments often define what the next season becomes.
The Lions know that the wrong hire or the wrong internal shift can stall momentum, while the right move can elevate everything. As this process unfolds, the key question becomes how aggressive Detroit should be in reshaping its offensive leadership while maintaining the identity that brought it success. What do you think this coaching turnover says about where the Lions believe they still need to improve? The way the Lions approach this next phase will reveal a lot about how they view their own window to compete. This is not a team searching for relevance anymore. This is a team trying to sharpen the edge. When you move on from an offensive coordinator after one season, it sends a clear internal message that standards are high and that performance is constantly being evaluated, regardless of past success or external perception. Detroit is not afraid of making uncomfortable decisions if they believe it serves the bigger picture. That mindset is exactly what has reshaped this organization over the last few years, and it is still very much alive. What makes this moment especially interesting is how little information typically leaks from Allen Park. The Lions have built a reputation for working quietly. While fans and media try to connect dots based on a handful of reported candidates, the reality is that the real work is happening behind closed doors. Dozens of interviews can take place without a single report surfacing. That secrecy is intentional. It allows the team to evaluate ideas freely, challenge assumptions, and avoid being boxed into narratives created outside the building. When a final decision is announced, it often feels sudden, but in truth it is the result of weeks of layered conversations. The offensive coordinator search is not just about play calling. It is about alignment with Dan Campbell's vision, collaboration with the existing staff, and the ability to adapt as the league evolves. Detroit is not looking for someone to simply install a system and stick to it. They want flexibility, communication, and leadership. Whether the next coordinator comes from a younger coaching background like David Blau or a more established profile like Mike McDaniel, the core requirement will be fit. Fit with the locker room, fit with the quarterback, and fit with the physical, aggressive identity the Lions have embraced. At the same time, the potential interest in Mike DISNER from Atlanta highlights another layer of this offseason that cannot be ignored. Front office stability matters just as much as coaching continuity. DISNER's candidacy for a president of football operations role shows that other teams are paying attention to how Detroit is structured. Even if nothing ultimately comes of it, the interview alone reinforces the idea that the Lions are no longer seen as a rebuilding project, but as a model worth studying. That kind of recognition often brings opportunity, and opportunity often brings turnover. The challenge is managing that without losing momentum. The departure of Tyler Rolle to Iowa State is a reminder that success naturally creates upward movement for coaches. When staff members grow and take on larger roles elsewhere, it reflects positively on the organization they came from. Still, every departure leaves a gap that must be filled thoughtfully. These are not isolated changes. They stack on top of each other, shaping the daily operations of the team. How the Lions respond to each one will influence preparation, player development, and ultimately performance on Sundays. This stretch of the offseason may not produce immediate headlines, but it is laying the foundation for everything that follows. The Lions are balancing continuity with evolution, loyalty with accountability. They are evaluating not just who can do the job, but who can elevate the standard. That balance is difficult, and it is where good teams separate themselves from great ones. Detroit understands that the margin is thin, and that is why every decision right now carries weight. As more information eventually comes out and official announcements are made, the picture will become clearer. Until then, what fans are witnessing is an organization fully engaged in shaping its future, piece by piece, without panic and without complacency. What cannot be ignored in all of this is how tightly connected these decisions are. The offensive coordinator hire will not exist in a vacuum. Whoever steps into that role will be walking into a building where expectations are already established, where accountability is not a slogan but a daily standard. That person will also need to integrate seamlessly with a staff that has been together long enough to develop trust and shared language. That is not always easy, especially when turnover happens quickly. The Lions know that, which is why this search is as much about personality and communication as it is about scheme and resume. There is also an internal evaluation happening that fans rarely get to see. When an organization parts ways with a coordinator after one season, it forces self-reflection across the entire operation. What worked, what didn't, and what lessons need to be applied moving forward. Those conversations shape how interviews are conducted and what questions are asked. Detroit is not simply asking candidates what offense they want to run. They are asking how that offense adapts when things break down, how it responds to adversity, and how it complements the identity of the team rather than fighting against it. The same quiet scrutiny applies to the front office situation involving Mike DISNER. Even the possibility of losing a high-ranking executive forces contingency planning. Strong organizations are prepared for that before it happens. They identify internal voices ready to take on more responsibility and ensure that systems remain intact regardless of personnel changes. That level of preparation is part of why Detroit has been able to sustain progress instead of resetting every time the offseason arrives. It is not about one name. It is about structure. What makes this moment so compelling for fans is that it represents a crossroads without drama. There is no collapse to clean up, no emergency rebuild to explain away. This is refinement. This is the hard part of staying good. The Lions are adjusting details while the foundation remains strong. That kind of offseason does not always feel exciting, but it often matters more than splashy moves. It is where discipline is tested and long-term vision either holds or cracks. Every interview, every internal meeting, every staff adjustment is part of a broader question the Lions are answering right now. How do you keep climbing when you are already near the top? The answer is rarely obvious, and it never comes from standing still. Detroit is choosing movement, even when it is uncomfortable, because they believe that is the price of growth. There is also a broader league context that quietly pressures every move Detroit makes, even if it is never stated publicly. With 7 head coaching vacancies around the NFL, the demand for innovative minds is high, and that demand naturally pulls assistants, coordinators, and executives into conversations they might not have expected a year ago. That reality forces the Lions to think not only about who they want to bring in, but also about who they might have to replace sooner than planned. Sustaining success in the NFL often means constantly reinforcing the middle and lower layers of the organization before cracks ever appear. That is why the Lions' tendency to work in silence matters so much right now. While fans wait for names and announcements, Detroit is evaluating compatibility at a granular level. They are weighing how a potential offensive coordinator collaborates during the week, how they communicate adjustments, and how they handle disagreement inside the staff room. These are the details that rarely make headlines but often decide whether a season holds together when pressure rises. The Lions have lived through instability before. The current leadership understands exactly how fragile progress can be if the wrong personalities are brought into the mix. This offseason also reinforces how much trust exists between ownership, the front office, and the coaching staff. Decisions like moving on from John Morton after one season are not made lightly, and they are not made by one voice alone. They reflect alignment at the highest levels of the organization. That alignment is one of the strongest indicators that Detroit believes its competitive window is open right now. Teams that feel uncertain tend to delay or compromise. Teams that feel confident act decisively. The Lions' actions point clearly to the latter. For the fan base, this creates a different kind of tension. There is excitement, but also patience being tested. Everyone wants clarity, yet clarity only comes at the end of a process, not the beginning. The Lions are asking their supporters to trust the same approach that brought the team to this point. That trust is being repaid with seriousness, discipline, and a refusal to settle for comfort. As the weeks move forward, each confirmed hire or departure will begin to fill in the picture. Until then, what matters most is understanding the intent behind the movement. Detroit is not chasing trends. They are reinforcing standards. They are not reacting to noise. They are responding to internal evaluation. That is the difference between an offseason that feels busy and one that actually changes outcomes. Another layer that deserves attention is how these internal shifts affect the players, even if nothing is said publicly. Players feel stability and instability long before fans do. When a coordinator changes, when position coaches move on, or when executives are interviewed elsewhere, it changes daily routines, messaging, and expectations. The Lions are clearly trying to minimize disruption while still demanding growth. That balance is difficult, especially for a team that has built its identity on trust and consistency. Every move right now is being filtered through that lens. This is where Dan Campbell's role becomes even more central. He is not just overseeing football operations on the field, he is acting as the connective tissue between departments. Any new offensive coordinator will have to align with his leadership style, his emphasis on toughness, and his belief in collective accountability. Detroit is not hiring a star to override the culture. They are hiring someone to enhance it. That distinction matters, because it narrows the field in ways fans may not immediately recognize. Big names mean nothing if the philosophy does not match. The same philosophy applies if changes eventually come in the front office. The Lions have worked hard to create a unified structure where roles are clearly defined and collaboration is constant. Losing someone like Mike DISNER would not just be about replacing a title, it would be about preserving a system that has finally begun to function smoothly. That is why these interviews, even when they involve other teams, matter so much internally. They test the depth and resilience of the organization. What fans are watching now is the unseen work of a franchise that understands how rare its position is. The Lions are not rebuilding hope. They are protecting it. That requires discipline, foresight, and sometimes unpopular decisions. It also requires confidence in the process, even when answers are delayed. Detroit is choosing patience over panic and intention over impulse. As this offseason continues to unfold, every confirmed move will make more sense in hindsight. The pieces will connect, and the picture will sharpen. Until then, the most important thing to recognize is that the Lions are acting like a team that expects to contend, not one that is satisfied